Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Today, we discuss something not often featured on the channel. No, not a Nautilus. We have those all the time. But one of the very earliest iterations of the Patek Philippe 5711 1A. This is the 001. The original version of the watch launched at Basel 2006. And there are quite a few detail differences between this and even an end-of-the-line 2021 5711. So let's break into it now. Stainless steel. It's 40 millimeters in diameter. It's 8.5 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, just the case. 44.1 millimeters. Now, if we measure the first link to its opposite number on the other side, the first thing I'll notice is that there's a lot more flexibility in these early bracelets. So the total distance across the wrist, even if you include the end links, it's just 46 millimeters, which is considerably narrower than the later 5711s, which have much stiffer bracelets that don't want to be pulled down straight vertical like that from the case band. So that's an interesting thing to note, as it does make the watch wear better on a small wrist. So if you were borderline for a 5711 and you were thinking about maybe going with a mid-sized Nautilus, you may not need to. If you're a lady or a person with a more petite wrist, this early 5711 could actually fit perfectly on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. Look where the lugs are relative to the edge of my wrist. There are no issues with fit, and of course, it's always been a very flat watch with a sloped flank. It'll slide easily under a cuff, and my wrist is 16 centimeters circumference. The bracelet, beautifully made as ever, but again, a little bit more flexible than later on. Later on, the bracelet would have sort of a flare or a fight to it, so you couldn't pull it down any more than this, whereas on this early bracelet, see what I'm about to do? It comes straight down. That is not something present on later versions. But it is beautifully designed, of course, since 1976 and the first Gerald Genta designed Nautilus 3700. The idea is that the case flows into the lugs, flows into the bracelet, and it just happens to be, like the prior Royal Oak, a bracelet with a timepiece attached. That was how Genta envisioned it. Now you can see the links do taper down towards the clasp, and there's a bevel along the shoulder of the case that then runs alongside the shoulder of the links. Satin finish and profile. Polish and satin across the top. And an element that would disappear later on. Removable links fixed in place using screws, not pin sleeves. This is the way I prefer to see it. While Patek has a point about people stripping out screws, I prefer to trust the user rather than downgrade to the strip-proof but also cheaper pin sleeve arrangement. So this is an important feature if you are a Patek Philippe collector. We have a little ceramic spring-loaded pin snap right there. So over time, the clamshell lock, this guy, cannot wear down the pin snaps and reduce the snappiness, if you will, of the closure mechanism. So that's what those little pin snaps are doing inside there. Of course, we have a double fold deployment clasp there, and we've got a watch that was originally sold back in 2009, so not recent vintage. It is one of the earliest examples. It has features that, in all likelihood, predate even the 2009 version of the watch, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Case back, mid-case, and bezel. As with all 5711s, it's a three-piece construction, but the 120-meter water resistance, as hermetically tight as any of the monoblock era cases. We have a combination of polish, satin, and a great deal of complexity, both in terms of how the case is finished and how it's assembled. One of the structural reasons why over time the Nautilus has always been justifiably more expensive than an Aquanaut. Now, the Nautilus bezel always struck me as a more refined design than the Royal Oak. With the Royal Oak, Genta had this idea of a sort of rounded polygon, but he didn't take it all the way. The inner bezel, crystal, and dial are still round, whereas on the Nautilus, outer bezel, inner bezel, crystal, and dial, they all have that same rounded polygonal form. We have the lateral striations that have been a feature of the Nautilus since the beginning. We have a blue dial in metallic, but it's also a gradient fade, so darker at the edge and then lighter in the center. White gold hands, white gold indices, the idea, of course, being that they'll never tarnish or oxidize because they are an inert material. And then we have plenty of luminescence, superluminova, naturally. We've got a quick set date, though not hacking seconds. That wasn't part of the Nautilus until caliber 26-330 started arriving in 2019. So I've got the ability to quickly change the date, although truth be told, if you're familiar with these center second 324s, you know that applying even a small amount of back pressure can stop the seconds hand allowing you to quickly and easily halt it wherever you want to set the watch against a reference time. So it doesn't have hacking, but there is the hacking hack, so to speak. Turning it all over, 21 jewel, unidirectional winding, automatic, caliber 324, 45-hour power reserve. This generation of the movement is 5-position adjusted, and as you can see, it features the nostalgic and long discontinued Geneva hallmark. It's a 4 Hz beat rate, a Gyromax style free sprung balance for precise adjustment and shock resistance. And it also features the metal hairspring as opposed to the later silicone hairspring that filtered out into the line around 2011. So again, this featuring the June or July 2009 Geneva hallmark. I believe it was in June or July of 2009 when the Patek Philippe seal was introduced. And this is the older stamp that was included from 2006 to about mid-2009. I happen to like the nostalgia of the old mark. Qualitatively, it's as good as any Nautilus past or present. Of course, the 324 is a mass-produced movement, so we're not going to compare it to something like a Patek Grand Complication, but compared to something like an Audemars Piguet or an F.P. Journe, it does appear to have more of an emphasis on the hand finishing side of manual mechanical balance than those others do. So it is a very accomplished movement from an aesthetic standpoint, and it will hold up under scrutiny. Again, a 4 Hz beat rate, unidirectional winding, 45-hour power reserve. This is a fantastic watch, and in a lot of ways, because so many changes occurred during the run of the 5711, having something that's very comparable to the original watch of 2006 means you probably have something that's uncommon even by the standards of 5711s, as well, from mid-2009 when the Geneva hallmark disappeared to 2021 when the model was discontinued, you had quite a few more made. So 06 to 09 production is both scarce and collectible. So reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.